Hi, it's Andrew Burke from the Code School Halifax again, and last time we managed to get all of our data showing up on our page in a big list. We looped through the content and showed it on the screen, which was great. We even got totals, but it all kind of looks kind of ugly. It's a bullet list and things. So we're going to look at some other ways to show this kind of information more cleanly on our page using tables. So we're back to HTML, and then we're going to do a little bit of CSS and a little bit of number formatting too, just to make things look a little cleaner. All right, so hang on, here we go. Here's our web page so far, and you can see here is our list of countries with the number of people who've recovered in each country, and a total at the top of all the countries as we go through them. And this is great. This is live information off the live internet. So ideally, every time we do one of these videos, this number up here will get a little bigger. I think it is. I haven't double checked. But this is nice. But we also track other information in here in the data set that got sent to us. It includes, people who've gotten ill, number of cases, etc. But it also includes the total number of new recoveries since yesterday or in the last day. So that's kind of a handy piece of information to show how much progress is being made in the recoveries standpoint. Now, you might have to double check your data to see what those numbers are. So for example, if we go into here and just do console log, oops. Oh, I got caps lock on. Go in here and do console log and just do our next country. Okay. And let's open this and do our inspect and go to our console and make sure we're evaluating all. That's good. And let's reload the page. Here's everything there. You can see here, total recovered, new recovered. So that's going to be the name we want to use, new recovered with a capital N and R. So let's put this in here just to sort of show you how that might work. And we're going to build up this string a bit with brackets. So it'll be at the end with brackets, okay? And it'll be next country, new recovered. Okay, so you can see here, we've got our open bracket, our thing, and our closed bracket, then we close the list item. So let's see what that looks like. Oh, we'll turn off this console log. We don't need that anymore. Okay, we'll close our console, reload the page. And here you can see in brackets, it's the new recoveries. So for example, Austria has 254 recoveries. New ones yesterday. So they've been really ramping up on the recoveries, it looks like. That's kind of nice to see. So there you can see country, total recovered, new recovered. We can even do a total up here of total new recoveries in the last day. So we can just do that here in this totals section by tracking this new recovered information as well. I like to sort of copy paste because these name references are always a bit tricky. So we'll just stick this in here for now. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so var total new recoveries equals 0. And then we go total new recoveries equals total new recoveries plus next country new recovered. And then here, we can add this to our string. Okay, let's see what that does. So we have 172,000 recoveries and 11,000 new ones since yesterday. Okay, that's kind of handy. You can see all these ones down here. Now, this is nice and everything, but I have to say this is a little bit ungainly to sort of see what's going on properly. Okay, we have the total recoveries and new is fine, but down here, this is getting a little hard to read and understand. So we're going to go and use a classic bit of HTML called tables. Now, tables have had a bad rap over the years because way back in the early days, tables were the only real way you could do layout properly on a web page with any kind of sophistication, with things next to each other and variable widths and relationships and things. And that was how people had to use tables for a while. And when CSS came along, it had its own layout tools, some of which were better than others. People often still use tables because there were certain things you still couldn't do well without them. However, these days, CSS is much better, and you should only use tables really for doing things that are in tables with rows and columns that look like a spreadsheet. And in this case, this is exactly the kind of thing we want to do here, because as you can see, we got a bunch of data. Each row should have maybe 3 columns, etc. Our totals could even have a table layout. And this is what we're going to do. So let's show you how tables work. Some useful HTML here. So we're going to start with the section up here. And instead of having just a list like this, we're going to do it with a table. Okay, so let's go up in here. Instead of saying global count, let's just put it right inside this content table. And you see it closes it for us. And so anything that's a table should be inside table tags. And then each row of a table should be in TR tags. It means table row. Okay, so there's going to be 2 rows. One will be the headings, and underneath it will be the numbers. So we'll do one set of headings here. So TH is a cell that's a header cell. Those are formatted slightly differently. Okay, and that'll be the kinds of the things like the header row in your Excel spreadsheet, or they can be also a column. But you can put TH wherever you want, but usually they all show up in one row at the top. Total new recoveries. Okay, let's take a look and see what that does. Okay, it didn't do anything because this bit here rewrites the whole global count section with the new content. So what we're going to do is we're just going to comment this bit out for now. So that's no longer going to actually write the totals yet. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so there's our things side by side. And if we roll over, you can sort of see table bits there, which is good. Let's add another row with regular cells. Okay, so TH is a header cell. TD, table data, is a regular cell. Okay, and recoveries in here. We'll just put some placeholders in and we'll show you how this works in a minute. Okay, new recoveries in here. Save that, come over, reload. You can see here they're now on top of each other. Okay, so we have rows here and we have columns sort of along here. Okay, and they're kind of munched next to each other. We'll work on layout and making them look nicer in a bit. But you can see here we have rows and columns and recoveries and stuff. Okay, now how do we get these actual values into these slots? Well, we use IDs, just like we've been doing before, just like we sort of did here. But instead of the whole global count, we're going to actually put IDs on these individual cells. So total recoveries, and give these an ID equals total new. Okay, now we can just use exactly the same thing we were doing here. Okay, total recoveries, HTML. I cannot type today. Total recoveries. So this is the variable we've been building up, right? Total recoveries is added up, and we're going to stick it in there. So let's see if that works. 172341. Perfect. And then new recoveries will do exactly the same thing. Total new HTML, total new recoveries. And let's see what that does. Okay, perfect. And we can get rid of these placeholder bits because they're just going to look funny for the brief moments while things are loading. Okay, and let's reload the page. There we go. Now we've got some proper stuff going on. Now we can get rid of these because they're not doing anything anymore. And now we have our totals are working nicely. Now let's try to do the same thing down here with the stuff that's being built dynamically. It's the same principle, except instead of having a bunch of TRs and TDs here in the actual HTML page, we're going to build it up here just like we built this unordered list. Same kind of thing. Okay. Now, what I often like to do with these is do a dummy version just somewhere else on the page first, just to see how it goes, and then put the stuff in properly. So I'm going to do a little copy and paste here with some places that actually have some content. There we go. So just up here, I'm going to put in a table, and it'll be country, TR, which will be TH country, and TH recovered, and then TH new. Okay, let's take a look at that now. Okay, there's our 3 headings we might have. And then we'll have these, and we'll just sort of show you tr. Oops, and of course it keeps helpfully auto-completing for us. And then td for each element here. Okay, so I like to do this just to get the hang of how things are going to fit together. Okay, and then we can do the same thing with our other values. Oh, we don't need the brackets either because it's just regular data. Let's look at that. So you can see here Australia has it. Okay, and let's do that with the rest of these. We'll just copy paste the row because the twiddling with the HTML is a tricky bit. Putting the different content in is actually easier. Okay. Whoops. 479 254. Hey, good for Austria for really coming through this and getting some good recoveries on. Okay. And Azerbaijan. Now we can get rid of these, and we have ourselves a table. So you can see here, this is kind of what we're going to want to have done in this content. Now, what I like to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to copy and paste it up into here as reference. So I'll have it handy to look at while we're putting this together. Now, if I try to run this right now, it doesn't do anything. It actually blows up the page because this isn't valid JavaScript. So we can comment this out using block comments, which are done like this. So you maybe remember we added single line comments sometimes with a //. There's another way of doing comments, which is using a /* at the beginning and a // at the end. And now we'll block off whole chunks of the code and mark them as comments. And you can see here Visual Studio turns them green. Depending on the theme you're using, you might have different colors, but it'll do something like that. Okay, so now we know this is sort of what we're aiming for. And we're going to basically replace what's in here with kind of what's in here. So instead of UL, it's going to be table, right? And instead of /UL, it's going to be /table. Now, another quick thing we're going to do, because this is going to be kind of handy and save us a bit of space. We showed here country's entry equals country's entry plus whatever. That's fine, but there's a little shortcut because we do this a lot when we're coding, is we're adding things to themselves a lot. And the shortcut for that is to say plus equals and just the content. So this is basically the same as country's entry equals country's entry plus next entry. Okay. And in fact, this is slightly wrong because I didn't need to have var here because I'd already put var up here. You only need to put var at the beginning. I noticed this after I'd recorded this and was fine-tuning it for deployment and realized I left that middle thing in. So there we go, I fixed that. So same thing can happen here. Okay, this allows us to add things a bit more cleanly and put things together without having so much content and text. Same thing when you're doing math. You can do the same thing here and the same thing here. Anything that has less code is usually good because the more code you write, the more opportunities you have for things to break. Trust me on that one. Okay, so here we have our table, and we're going to also do our header part. This is no fancy coding or mixing of things involved. So country's entry, okay, and just put quotation marks around it. Okay, so now we have our table, our country, and then these in here should also be table cells. So it'd be one of these kinds of things. So it's going to be a tr and td, and then next country, country, /td, td. Now, we're getting kind of big. We're finally wrapping way over past our window size, and that sort of worries me. I don't like things that are too long, especially if it's fiddly, and if you miss a plus or a quotation mark somewhere, the whole thing's going to kind of fall apart and make a mess. So I like to break these out into smaller chunks. So we can do it sort of cell by cell. Okay. And then we can do this here and close this one. And then here. And new recovered. And then Okay, so that's every line gives us this, and then we add that to our full countries list. And then we add the table closing at the end. Okay, so we have our TR and our TR. Sometimes I even like to make these explicit. It's easier to not forget them this way. And also if you're rearranging things, sometimes you want to rearrange things, you should keep the closing tags out in their own place. Okay, now this mixing and matching of HTML and CSS and JavaScript is a little bit weird. You get the hang of it after a while, but it can become a headache because, of course, it's not proofing your HTML either. So you have to be careful. This is why I like to work from a template here and sort of swap things in as needed. But let's see what this looks like when we try to run it. Okay, there we go. This is pretty good. You can see here we're getting our numbers coming through, and they're all in their own columns, recovered amounts and new amounts. Okay, that's pretty neat. Now we can get rid of this dummy one that we just put in, so we don't need that anymore. Whoops. Sometimes you need to make this bigger. Okay, let's put this away. And let's see how that looks. Okay, not bad. Now there's two other little small things we might want to do here that'll make things look a fair bit better pretty quickly and easily. You can see here all the tables are kind of flush left and they don't take up the available space. They're kind of fine, but they're kind of awkward looking. Well, a quick and easy way to do that is to get back to our CSS. So CSS, we'll just go in here and open up our style CSS file. Now we used to have them all kind of laid out where the styles was over on this side. And it gets a little awkward to rearrange these sometimes because it's only a subset of the available space. So you sort of sometimes have to juggle your tabs around. And when in doubt, move everything back up to a full set of tabs up here and then start again. Okay, there you go. Now we've got them broken out. Put our HTML down here. And now we're basically back to where we were. And while we're at it, let's get rid of this. We don't need this in here anymore because it's all done, so we don't need to keep that. Now, the quick and easy way to make tables look a little better, there's a whole bunch of CSS you can do to tables, but the number one that's really nice and easy is to set up the table tag so that anything that's got a table will have a width of 100%. 100% means give me the full width of the parent thing that it's inside. So in this case, these will then expand to fill the available width of the cell that they're in. That's not the width of the window, that's the width of the box that the div that they're contained in. Okay, so we've saved that. Let's see what this looks like now. Okay, that's a lot nicer. You can see there they stretch and shrink for the available space, which is kind of nice. And that gives us a bit more spacing, especially up here. This looks great up here. These are nicely spaced out. And yeah, it gives us a much more clean look that we're going for, okay? The other one, it's a bit of a JavaScript thing. That was CSS, now some JavaScript. These numbers are kind of hard to read. When we have big numbers like that, it's one thing to have 33 and 2. That's one thing. But once we start getting into things like China with 75,000, or, you know, other countries are starting to have some of these larger numbers, France, for example, it's a little hard to read, right? Now, it'd be nice if we could just have it. We could, of course, write a small function that finds every 3 numbers and puts a comma in, but it turns out that's surprisingly difficult to do well. But thankfully, JavaScript has us covered with that. And it does this by using a little utility function called toLocalString. Okay, now I'm going to show you how this works. So let's go to our bit that fills in the numbers here, total recoveries, to locale string. Okay, so it's a function that's attached to the little string here, to the number, and I'll show you what that looks like, total recoveries. Okay, locale is what your browser knows about you, is it sort of knows where you are roughly based on the language settings you gave in your computer when you set it up. You know, when you first start your computer, it's like, what country are you in? Usually it guesses depending on who you bought it from and things, but you can of course set it. So here it knows that I'm in Canada, and in Canada we like to put commas between our thousands. If you're in France or parts of Europe, they use a dot instead and a comma for the decimal place. And sometimes in other languages, they use spaces between things. What's nice is the toLocalString knows all the regional variations and will do whatever's appropriate for where you are. So you don't have to manually figure it out yourself. That said, adding this to everything is fine. You can do that and that works. Yay. But it's a little bit messy to have this stuck in everywhere. And I just find it sort of locale. What is a locale string supposed to be? I like, even sometimes even if it's a one-liner, I like to write a little function that does all this for me, and then I don't have to think about it. So I can call it something like format big number, and just have it do the same thing we were doing, but the specifics are wrapped up in a thing that we can give it a name. And this is a handy way to use functions and things like that to help explain what's going on and make things clearer for you. So I don't really care that it's got this locale string. That doesn't really describe things properly. But if I say format big number and pass the thing in, okay, it'll do basically the same thing, but with a somewhat better description. Whoops, got the wrong one there. Whoops, total new recoveries. There we go. So this is like a function normally, like all the other functions we've dealt, where we put something in, it shows up here at hyperspace is in, then it does something and it returns it, which means this function here is going to have something at the end. And of course, you see these two little errors happening because we've only got one set of brackets, but in fact, of course, we have two sets of brackets to worry about. So we need an extra bracket back here. This is an easy and common mistake to make, but you can see here when you still have the problem, it'll have it highlighted in red. And then if you click on this, it'll show you these brackets and you realize, whoops, I've got this bracket. It doesn't have anything to fit. Oh no. So we can put this here. This is one of those habits you'll get used to the more programming you do. So anyway, this does the thing and then returns the new value. So it's sort of like it takes this and turns it into a new variable and does things. So you can swap that in on the fly. That's handy. Okay. So let's see if that works. Exactly the same as before. And then we can take this exact same thing and do it up here in our HTML. And same thing with recovered. And don't forget your closed brackets. And let's see what that does. Okay, nothing here, but when we get to Belgium, there's 1,359. Get down to China, 75,000. Okay, that's where these numbers come in handy. And France, of course, has other ones too. Okay, so you can see how all that fits together. And that makes the numbers nicer too. Okay, now before we get further along, let's put this all away into Git. Okay, so this is all good. Let's mark these as committed and table layout and I cannot type today and number formatting. And there we go. Okay, so now we've got ourselves done. Now, if you want to just take a quick look, here's our history. Here you can see all the different things we've done over the last few days, and each one has a commit, and you can, poke around and see what the changes are. You can even roll the code back to there. You can do all sorts of things, but it's nice to sort of see your history here of everything you've done, which is very cool. Okay, so there we go. And next we're going to make this look even better with a whole bunch more CSS stuff and some filtering of the contents and things like that, which will make this an even nicer thing to work with. All right, so stay tuned for the next episode.